So let's talk about the first concept here. A concept when we were prepping, we talked about as being the lazy programmer. What are we talking about here, Danny?
Yeah, sure. So the concept of the lazy programmer is that, well, okay, it's a simple concept and it's also a complicated one. So I'll give you the short answer is the lazy programmer is basically, you don't have to start from scratch with, if you have an idea, if you want to create something, you don't necessarily need to start from scratch. The concept of lazy programmer is you can start designing code yourself from the first line, or you can build off of code that other people have already laid the way for. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, you know, they make a mistake of being really kind of creative and kind of wasting time on the wrong things, when one of the most important traits of successful entrepreneurs is the speed of implementation and not being too creative and just really implementing fast. How quickly you are able to implement the processes of your would-be company is a big part of the game. And I don't know if we're going to talk about this a little more later, but there's a concept called the Cynefin framework. It's C-Y-N-E-F-I-N. And basically the Cynefin framework is built, made up of 4 quadrants. So it divides up work into 4 different parts. You have simple work, complicated work, complex, and chaotic. And in the last century, we've mostly been doing simple and complicated work, which basically requires you to go to college, which requires you to get a degree, but it's something that you can learn from a textbook. Entrepreneurship is not really something, the things that entrepreneurship throws at you are not things that you can learn from a textbook. So entrepreneurs tend to spend most of their time within the complex and chaotic domains where there is nothing, you know, no blueprint for how you can do it. So if there are certain processes in your company, you need to learn how to, how can it borrow a knowledge that some other entrepreneur has already acquired or someone else has already acquired. Because whenever you do something for the first time, it's very, very hard. But then to repeat it after that, it gets easier and easier and easier. And you can do it almost without a second thought. It can be systemized. So you really need to identify where those inflection points are and where you need to be spending your time. And entrepreneurs have to sort of sacrifice small gains in order to get the large gains, the bigger picture.
Yeah.
So like I said, it's kind of a short answer and also more complex as you kind of get into it, I suppose.
Yeah, well, the beautiful thing I think we talked about is that we won't go too much more deep into, and I'm never going to be able to pronounce that name. I want to say cuneiform, but that's not it. The process, go ahead and repeat the name of the process again.
It's the Cynefin framework.
Cynefin, okay. And here's what I was going to interrupt you for a second. I think when we were prepping, aren't you going to include something about that in your next book, or in a future book, or did you include it in one of your previous books?
No, I haven't. It's on Wikipedia if you look at it.
Okay.
But to go back to lazy programmer, I'm looking at my book right now. The definition is the simplest solution is best. You know, embrace simplicity and really know what to focus on. And that's why I brought in the Cynefin framework, because as an entrepreneur, you really have to understand what your responsibilities are and how you allocate your time, where you allocate your time. And I'd love to talk more about that, but it's such a broad, complex topic that I didn't want to get too long-winded.
No, it's okay. And I'm glad you brought it up. It's interesting because a lot of people, you know, our viewers who stuck with us and realized that a lot of times we say things like lazy programmer, it doesn't always apply to programming, have realized by now that the advice Danny's just given you applies to everything. From a programming standpoint, it's the same reason why people are making boatloads of money doing WordPress templates, and it's the same reason why most WordPress sites have some sort of template to start off with, because if you had to code everything from scratch on WordPress, it's going to take you a long time and not be worth your time. The trouble with us entrepreneurs, and whether we want to live a lifestyle business or not, is the fact that, we have this desire to learn, this desire to do everything. It's funny because desire comes from the word desire to sire. We always want to create things. And we sometimes let that get in the way of, of progress. I mean, I'll tell everybody a quick funny story. I did this once. I happen to have a background in IT, and the short version is that I spent probably about 72 straight hours with no sleep coding something that, in the end, if I just spent a couple of bucks and 3 minutes of research, I could have bought for free. I could have basically bought, and afterwards I felt a great feeling of accomplishment, and I was also kicking everything in the room because no sleep will tend to do that to you. So the reason I bring it up is because whether it's programming, whether it's advertising, there's this new site Canva out there, which is helping people make great graphics, great images, and shortcutting it for people, that sort of thing. You got to find the shortcuts and treat the word lazy not as it was in the old days, which is negative, but treat it with a positive and say you're smart. You're going out and looking for these things, right, Danny?
Yeah, if you can get a job done in 5 minutes, then it doesn't make sense to spend 5 hours on it. And I'm not saying to go out and plagiarize, but you can build on the shoulders of giants, as it were. And Ruby on Rails is a perfect example from the programming world. Ruby on Rails builds on all of the programming languages that came before it to make applications much easier to develop. And there's a quote from Robert Greene, which puts an emphasis on this point in the book 48 Laws of Power. He says, "Use the wisdom, knowledge, and legwork of other people to further your own cause. Not only will such assistance save you valuable time and energy, it will give you a godlike aura of efficiency and speed. Never do yourself what others can do for you." And so that godlike aura of efficiency and speed is really vital for lifestyle designers, entrepreneurs who want to survive in the new world that is coming, because the envelope is going to keep being pushed further. And so, to give you an example of how I might do this, I always get compliments on my book covers. I design my own book covers, but what people don't realize is that I can design my book covers in maybe 1 or 2 hours. And the reason I can do that is because I use templates. I use templates from Shutterstock.com. I can go on there and search for kind of graphics that I'm looking for, and for $10 I can get a really, really great design, and I can customize it any way I want. I can add other images in there, and I always, people always say your cover looks amazing, and I'm like, yeah, and they don't understand that I spent $10 and 2 hours on it. And this is totally counterintuitive to the way most people work, because I went to an advertising, the Art Institute. I got an advertising degree, and they were always forcing us to come up with comps from scratch. First starting with pen and paper, and it was a really long process. We'd have to come up with maybe 10 comps a week, and maybe over a period of 4 weeks, we'd finally get a finished logo, for example, which might work if you're in an advertising agency, working on $500 million contracts. But if you're an entrepreneur, you don't have that luxury. You don't have those kind of resources of time and money. You have to come up with the best solution in the simplest way possible in the least amount of time possible.
Yeah, exactly, and that actually flows us right, and that's epic. That is such epic advice, and that flows us right into the second point, I believe, which is create systems.
To watch the rest of this epic episode now, click on the link below the video. Do it now, you'll be glad you did. Are you still here? What are you waiting for? Watch the rest of this epic episode now by clicking on the link below the video.